Welcome back to AM Philadelphia. So many times in this program we've talked about medical malpractice and whether it puts the screws too tightly on the doctors, whether the lawyers are the profiteers. But very seldom do we talk about medical malpractice in terms of human cost, in terms of human beings suffering because a doctor made a mistake. Today we're going to do just that. I want to tell you about a remarkable young woman who is no longer alive because of a medical mistake. Her name was Iris Small. She was a very unusual young woman. After her graduation from Penn in 1976, she was planning to go to law school and in fact had been accepted at the University of Pennsylvania, Oxford, and Yale University. But she was a playwright and she went ahead and wrote plays, some of which were going to be published. She had a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania in European intellectual history. In other words, this is a woman that really had it together. She was 35 years old. And in August of 1986, she went into the hospital, a New York hospital, for what seemed like very routine surgery. I'll pick up the story by talking to Iris's sister. We are very pleased to have with us Debbie SMALL-MCCORD, who is Iris's sister. Welcome, first of all. And boy, this is tough to talk about probably even now.
Yes, it is.
It's okay. It's okay.
I am still very nervous and upset about it because it was uncalled for.
What was the problem? What did she go in for the surgery for?
She went in for a thyroid tumor on her uterus.
Common problem.
A common woman's problem. It was a minor operation. She had studied this for 2 years, so she was very settled what she was going in for. She was just in the hospital 2 months previous for a breast operation.
She was going to get married, right?
Yes.
And so she wanted to, like most women who are getting married, planning on having a family,
yes,
wanted to make sure that she was physically capable of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, Dad. She went in for the surgery.
Mm-hmm. She went in for the surgery on that Monday. And from then, I don't know exactly what happened. I know she went in that morning, that afternoon, the next day, she was gone. I received a call from the doctor, and he told me I had to hurry up and rush to the hospital. She had developed a fever, and this was at 11:38. Time I got to the hospital, which was around 2 o'clock, she was gone. The explanation we received was that she developed a fever and it could be contagious to the family. You know, anyone could develop. We tried to find out from there why didn't they give her a local anesthesia since she was just in there in May. They had really no answer for us, and just shifting the blame around as, you know, it's just something that happened.
They wouldn't give you a straight answer?
No.
How's your mom with this?
My mom is still upset. In the last couple years, or a year and a half, she has been in and out of the hospital. She has asthma, and now she has developed a heart problem.
How are you with this?
I'm still shaken from it. My whole family is still shaken from it because we are a close family. Holidays are important. We're in contact all the time.
Was Iris worried at all about the surgery?
No.
She just thought it would be a piece of cake?
Yes, she did. My mom had went up there that week, that day, to be with her. She knew she would be in for a week and back out. She had made all the plans for her to come home that following week.
35 years old?
34.
34.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to her fiance?
He's still shaken. I had just spoke to him about 2 weeks ago. He's still working in New York. He's just starting to get his life back together. He works in one of the theaters in New York. All of us are still shaken because she played a big part on all of our lives. From my youngest niece to my youngest sister, who stayed with her for about 3 months. And she was then taking care of them, so they're like destroyed from it.
Now that it's a year and a half later, not that it's any easier, but can you make sense of it?
No. still, we went into the case to find out why this happened, not for the money, because the money cannot bring Iris back. No kind of money could possibly bring Iris back, can replace her in our hearts. We went in to find out what exactly happened.
And that basically the only way you could do that is by suing.
Suing.
Does suing help the anger?
No.
Because if it happened in my family, if it happened to somebody, if it happened to my sister, I'd be furious. I'd be mad as hell.
No,
Does suing help the anger?
No. It doesn't help the anger. It doesn't help the hurt. It doesn't bring her back. All I can hear is that it could compensate her, my mom, and make her life easier, which my mom is 68, and I can't see it making it much easier because she's already settled.
Okay. We would like you to meet a doctor who is certainly no stranger to this area of medical practice. He's Dr. Charles MANCAN. He is with Pennsylvania Hospital, the Clinical Associate Professor, University of Pennsylvania, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. He is a specialist in the area of gynecologic oncology, which is specifically this area, the tumor area. Under normal circumstances, is Debbie right? Is it a piece of cake?
Well, it isn't exactly a piece of cake. It is major surgery, but it's a relatively common surgical procedure.
You're familiar with Iris's case?
Well, not the specific details, but certainly I've heard the outcome, yes.
What killed her?
Well, I think the diagnosis for this is what is called malignant hypothermia, which is a fairly rare complication of anesthesia.
Should it have happened, in your medical opinion?
Well, as long as physicians are human, there are going to be errors. Whether this should have been detected earlier or not, I wouldn't even want to comment on, because these cases all have their individual idiosyncrasies.
Okay.
I'd rather address the major issues, because our thrust is to eliminate these problems. Hopefully they may never be eliminated entirely, but I think that there may be ways to eliminate
But doctor, what you're telling me, though, is it could be just one of those things, and I've got a woman here who lost a sister.
Accidents are going to happen. Airplanes are going to go down, and we don't know why. I think the point is, our job is to eliminate these problems. They'll never be eliminated totally.
Not that we disagree with you. Very quickly before I break, I must introduce Attorney Stephen Scheller, who is represented the family who comes to us this morning. Can you be more specific? I mean, you took this case to trial, and you're familiar with the ins and outs. Should Iris Small have died?
Well, the answer is no, but the real problem with the Iris Small case was a combination of errors. The errors consisted of not having the proper technology in the operating room. When they did recognize that Iris was developing a fever, the appropriate response.
So in other words, the short answer is somebody blew it.
Yeah, and then the question is, and Dr. MANCAN and I are in agreement, and I think the family is, nothing could return Iris, but steps have got to be taken to correct these deficiencies in New York Hospital and other hospitals. Okay,
and we'll talk about what those steps are, and most importantly, how it affects you. You know, if you're going for surgery, you spend a lot of time finding the right surgeon, but the anesthesiologist is somebody who you usually see 5 seconds before they put the mask over you. Stay with us as AM Philadelphia continues. The human side of medical malpractice. A young, bright, promising young woman, 35 years of age, died needlessly, and that causes us to ask these questions of our guest this morning. We have her sister, we have a noted physician in the Philadelphia area, and also a noted attorney talking about this. I want to pick right what we were talking about. I would presume that if you operate, as you do, how many times a week?
Oh, probably 3 to 5 times a week.
3 to 5 times a week, okay. That the anesthesia, the person, the man and the woman, the doctor, who's the anesthesiologist, is your choice. That's your guy or your gal.
Well, that's a presumption that a lot of people make, but it is not always the fact. Most large hospitals have an entourage of anesthesiologists or anesthetist, and by and large, this is done by choice within the Department of Anesthesia. It's a scheduled thing.
So in other words, you're scheduled an anesthesiologist, and you might think he's a clown. You got to operate with him.
Well, if I thought he was a clown, I might try to influence getting another anesthesiologist. On the other hand,
but by and large, it's
by and large,
luck of the draw.
it's who's on call. Now, a patient can request a certain anesthesiologist under some circumstances, but there may be limitations within the scheduling where that individual you might not want because he's been on the night before.
Okay.
So I think there's the human factor that comes in there.
Okay. You took this to trial, and what was the outcome?
Well, no, it's going to go
pending?
to trial, and I think the hospital is basically going to concede that they were at fault here, and the real issue here is what to do about compensation. It's fortunate that Iris's family is very intelligent. They decided to look into the matter. Many of these deaths and incidents of these types of occurrences are just simply excused as an event that occurred that we have no reason to know why it occurred, and that's what the attempt was with the family here. They just said she had an allergic reaction to the anesthesia. The family wanted to know exactly what happened, and we looked into it and we found out it was a mistake that could have been prevented had it been handled in an appropriate fashion.
Are the individuals who committed that mistake still practicing medicine at that hospital?
Yes, the individuals are, and we don't know the full answers to that. We don't know what type of process has gone on within the hospital to correct this deficiency, and this is one of the most difficult problems in medicine. Doctors are left with the responsibility within the hospital of trying to correct their own mistakes, and they can't do that.
What's the problem there? I don't want to get too much into medical politics, but this really is a medical political question. Well, why can't you get rid of the bad apples?
Well, it's a multifactorial problem. Number one, we have a major problem with peer review. If, for example, there happens to be someone on a hospital faculty that is somewhat deficient in some areas, and they can be multiple different areas, stress, that sort of thing. It's very difficult to change the system because, for example, if the medical staff were to identify an individual that appears to have an inordinate number of problems with his cases, if the medical staff were to turn around and try to take those privileges away, they're open to lawsuit. In fact, there's a major case before the Supreme Court right now questioning peer review, and the problem is that individual can turn around and sue for restraint of trade.
Okay, but that's what I don't understand. I understand. Do you bristle at the notion that doctors do a pretty good job of protecting one another?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think most physicians, and we've talked about this before, most physicians feel if an error has been made or if something has occurred, a patient should be compensated, and adequately and reasonably compensated. That's not the issue with physicians. The issue is how do we clean our own house? And as I mentioned, there are intrinsic problems. If you, for example, were on the staff and were identified as an individual that had a number of different problems, how do we attack this problem? We may get together as a medical board and say, Wally has got to go. How do we get rid of him? Wally may turn right around to us after we take his privileges away and say, you fellas are interfering with my way of living. And he can get himself a lawyer and turn around and sue us.
I understand that, but you know, doctor, I got to tell you, if you're an airline pilot and you show up for work drunk, it's the last time you show up for work. Somehow, some way...
We're not talking about a doctor that shows up to work drunk. We're talking about a fellow that comes in sharp as a nail, gets at the head of the table, and in the heat of battle, an error occurs. In some cases, he may not be he may not be emotionally capable of handling the situation. Okay. He may have been up all night long. Errors occur to this individual. If you can identify that individual that seems to have an inordinate amount of problems, we are still very reluctant to put our own professions on the line.
Okay, I must ask this. We began the segment by talking about this remarkable young woman who had so much to give. When you take that to a court of law, does that interpret to dollars and cents? Does a 35, 34-year-old Iris Small, who has all these degrees and all this intelligence and all this stuff, does her wrongful death mean more money than were she a 70-year-old indigent?
Yeah, it's...
I hate to put it that way, but is that the way it is?
It's the way our system of justice works. Iris was a gem. I mean, and the family is being compensated as best we can for a the loss of a wonderful, wonderful person. And it's not to say loss of a 70-year-old person should be any different, but that's the only way in our system that we can get compensation and correction of the deficiencies, or one of the major ways that we have. Is it fair to say to the family, you've lost a woman who graduated the University of Pennsylvania, was a genius, was going to become one of the outstanding playwrights of our country, and you're entitled to only a minimal amount of compensation. What else can we give them? I mean, as Debbie says, nothing can replace Iris. This is what we have to give you. This is all we have to give you. We do the best we can.
Well, I think that everybody who watches this program and hears this story is sorry for your loss. And I know the court can't relieve your pain, but I hope that somehow, some way, you get some kind of satisfaction. Thank you all for being with us. Stay with us as AM Philadelphia continues. We'll tell you all about our next show.